If you're into podcasts, you should check out our podcast, Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. It's about cold cases that were eventually solved. New episodes are released every other week. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. Number 3. The Mason House Inn. The Mason House Inn is a bustling stay for the living and the dead. It's dubbed the Paranormal Disneyland because the building has a revolving door of more than 300 ghosts. The bed and breakfast is in Keosauqua, Iowa. It's along the Des Moines River near the Missouri border. The current owners are 63-year-old Joy Hansen and 68-year-old Chuck Hansen. The Hansens consider the spirits that haunt their inn as part of their family and treat these spirits with dignity. This may be why their inn is such a popular spot for the dead. The husband and wife bought the property in June 2001 after Chuck retired from the Air Force. The Hansens say spirits continue to act the same as when they were alive. They hear ghosts open and close doors, see them turn lights on and off, and walk around. They also hear the sounds of children jumping on beds, playing with items in the rooms, and knocking on doors. In May 2004, Joy opened the hotel for tours for school children, studying the Civil War and the Underground Railroad. On one of these trips, a teacher took a photo in room 6, and then when she looked at the photo later, she saw that a Civil War soldier in uniform was behind the school children. The building was constructed in 1846 by Mormon craftsmen. It was a hotel for steamboat travelers along the Des Moines River. 11 years later, Lewis and Nancy Mason took over the building. Through the decades, the hotel has been passed on through the family. During the ownership, some of the families have passed away within its walls. Lewis Mason died of an infection in the 1860s at the Mason house. Lewis and his wife, Nancy, lived in room 5, and the original bedroom can still be found there. Mary Mason Clark was the daughter of Lewis and Nancy. Mary and her husband, Francis Otis Clark, helped Nancy run the inn. Mary Mason Clark died of a heart attack in front of the bedroom on the 3rd floor in 1911. Mary's beard appears in a long black dress or a white nightgown. Her husband, Francis, appears in a black suit and has white hair and a short white beard. Francis haunts the inn even though he did not die in the building. Mary and Frank have been heard arguing in rooms 5 and 6. Fanny Mason Kurtz turned the hotel into a boarding house in the 1900s. In 1951, Fanny died in a dining room chair in front of the fireplace. She's seen in the dining room and parlor wearing a gray skirt and a white blouse, smiling and nodding at guests. The hotel property was also used as an Underground Railroad stop in the 1800s. The Underground Railroad was a system in North America that allowed enslaved black people to flee in secret. The hotel was also used as a holding hospital for injured soldiers during the Civil War. From 1861 to 1865, these injured soldiers were triaged at the Mason House before they were transported to a more appropriate hospital setting. Unfortunately, some died before they could make the transfer. One soldier who died was 15-year-old Markey. The Hansens have made contact with his spirit and attempted to help send him to the light. But they say that Markey stays in the inn by choice. Another former Civil War soldier, known as Harold, also haunts the inn. He was 34 years old when he died from gangrene while he was being treated at the Mason house. Witnesses have seen Harold walking around the inn in boots, lying in beds, and have heard him knocking on the walls in Morse code. The building was turned into a bed and breakfast in the early 2000s. Perhaps the most notable spirit who haunts the Mason House Inn is the one who saved Chuck Hansen's life. On July 18, 2013, Chuck woke up with a sinus infection. He coughed so hard that he passed out, but he hit his head on the wall before falling to the floor. 10 minutes later, he woke up, got himself dressed, and he went to the emergency room. He had a CT scan. He found out he had 2 broken vertebrae in his spine. He shattered his C1 vertebra, and he had to get a bone graft from his hip. Such an injury can leave a person unable to breathe properly or unable to walk. This injury could have resulted in death, but he survived. 2 weeks after Chuck's accident, psychic medium Chris Moon visited the inn. Moon is a paranormal investigator from Colorado, and he had visited the Mason House Inn more than 40 times. Moon brought his spirit box to the inn to communicate with the ghosts. The spirit box cycles through radio frequencies and allows ghosts to speak through the white noise. Moon and Chuck spoke to the spirits about Chuck's injuries. Through the spirit box, spirits communicated that they couldn't stop Chuck from falling, but they tried to prevent further damage. The spirits said that they held Chuck's head in place until he could get to the hospital. Chuck asked which spirits had helped him. According to Chuck and Moon, former President Abraham Lincoln took credit. The spirit of Abraham Lincoln joked, "You owe me $40 for the house call." Chuck questioned back, "How do you want that?" Lincoln replied, in fives, the American bill he's pictured on. Chuck said Lincoln's voice has come reliably through the spirit box with every attempt at communication. Lincoln makes it known that he doesn't like to talk about the Civil War. The Hansons decided to put up a plaque to honor the soldiers who died at the Mason House. Lincoln's response to the spirit box to the plaque was, "Those who served, I salute them." Chuck said that Lincoln's spirit has ended up at the Mason House because of Harold, the spirit of the former Civil War soldier. The Hansons had communicated to Harold that they wished he could have had the experience of going to the Lincoln Museum in Springfield, Illinois. But instead, Harold brought the Lincoln experience to the Hansons. The Mason House Inn hosts many paranormal events where guests get the opportunity to connect to spirits. Guests often ask the spirits what heaven is like. Some common responses from the spirits include, "Jesus is the way," and "human words can't describe heaven's beauty." Chuck said that the dead don't call it heaven, they call it home. After all Chuck has experienced at the Mason House, he says he is no longer afraid of death. Number 2. The Emily Morgan Hotel. Downtown San Antonio, Texas, was the site of a deadly battle in 1836. 600 people lost their lives when Mexican forces fought Texans at the Alamo. The Emily Morgan Hotel overlooks the site of this battle. The Gothic building is lined with gargoyles holding their teeth, stomach, and eyes. The gargoyles represent ailments because the hotel used to be the Medical Arts Building. In 1924, the building had dentist offices, a hospital, psychiatric ward, morgue, and crematorium. The building was turned into an office building in 1976 and then a hotel in 1984. The Emily Morgan Hotel has 177 rooms and 23 suites. Because of superstitions, there is no 13th floor. There is also no room 1408 because 1 plus 4 plus 8 equals 13. When the building housed a healthcare facility, the 14th floor was used for surgeries. Sometimes guests and staff at the hotel suddenly smell antiseptic, medication, and ointment on the 14th floor. Then there have been occasions when guests see scenes from the old hospital, and then the scenes suddenly disappear. Today, the swimming pool is on the 12th floor. Legend has it that the pool was built from the hospital's operating tables. On the 11th floor, guests have seen the ghost of an older woman in a white hospital gown crying and walking into rooms. Some guests have opened their door to find a ghostly nurse pushing a gurney down the hallway. On the 9th floor, guests have reported wine bottles sliding off tables, toilet seats banging up and down in the middle of the night, and doors opening on their own. In room 908, clothes have been thrown around. The bathtub jets will turn on and off by themselves all night. On this floor, a ghostly woman in a white and yellow dress will knock at your door throughout the night. When the guests open the door, she just walks away. Empty rooms will sound like they're full of guests playing music. Phones will ring in the middle of the night, and when picked up, there is no one on the other end of the line. Room attendants will clean a room, and once they've turned their back, they will find the pillows from the bed on the floor. On the 8th floor, guests have woken up to the feeling of someone sitting on their bed. The 7th floor is allegedly the most active. The ghost of a bride who died by suicide is said to make herself known. Guests are awakened by her blood-curdling scream around 3 a.m. Her spirit will also appear in mirrors and look right at the viewer. On the 7th floor, dark shadows appear in the hallways and the rooms. On one notable occasion, on the 3rd floor, a guest woke up to someone humming. The woman found a little girl at the foot of her bed. The girl asked the guest if she wanted to sing, then she disappeared. The next night, the woman woke up at the same time and felt someone climb into bed with her. She could see the indentation of someone in the bed and felt a cold spot against her side, like someone was lying against her. The elevators are also known to have minds of their own. They take guests past floors that they request and bring them to the basement. Then, the elevators refuse to move. The basement is allegedly where the former morgue and crematorium were located. The elevators are regularly checked for faulty wiring, but nothing is found wrong. In the basement, people have seen orbs, heard anguishing screams, and smelled burning flesh. Deborah McNabb used to be the sales manager at the Emily Morgan Hotel. On one occasion, she was staying at the hotel and she had left her room for dinner. When she returned, her bathtub was half full of blue water, as if the water had been dyed. She thought a coworker was playing a joke on her, so she checked the keycard system to see when the room was entered. She was the only one who had entered the room. Needless to say, it's hard to find a room in this building that isn't haunted. In 2021, historic hotels named the Emily Morgan Hotel one of the top 25 most haunted hotels in America. Number 1. The Clown Motel is the perfect setting for a horror movie, a motel off the interstate. Then, there are thousands of clowns. To make matters worse, the motel is located next to a cemetery. Perhaps it's not surprising, but this hotel is believed to be haunted. The Clown Motel in Tonopah, Nevada started with pure intentions. Now it's a site for the paranormal. The lobby greets you with a large, haunted clown doll that moves by itself. Then you make your way to your room, which has themes based on some of the scariest horror movies of all time, including It, The Exorcist, or Friday the 13th. A man named Francisco Mendoza stayed at the motel for an extended period. When he would go to bed, he would leave the bathroom door shut with the light on. When he would wake up, the door would be open and the light would be off. Sometimes the shower would turn on by itself. Other nights, the bed covers would suddenly be pulled off of him. One of the most terrifying nights he had, he woke up around 3 a.m. and saw two shadows sitting on the chairs in his room. Jessalyn Domingo worked at the motel and talked about her experiences with investigators from Paranormal Voyages. One day she was cleaning a room called the Clown Suite when she shook a fresh sheet over the bed. The corners of the sheet fell on the bed, but in the middle was a mound, as if a body was lying there. She dropped the sheet and walked out of the room. When she came back into the room, the outline of the body was gone. One morning, staff opened the motel to find the large clown in the lobby, sitting at the front desk. These staff members were the only ones with key access. Ghost investigators have caught the clown red-handed. It happened to Celia Ramos, one of the investigators with Paranormal Voyages. Years ago, Ramos was interviewing the owner of the hotel in front of the large clown. The owner at the time, Heyman Nudd, was telling Ramos that his staff stories about this clown moving scared him. At that moment, Ramos felt an intense burning in her chest. She stopped the interview and revealed redness on her chest. She felt nauseous and jittery, and she started having heart palpitations. Ramos investigated room 108, the It Room. Paranormal Voyages cameraman Joe Miranda slept in the It-themed room before they conducted their investigation. He woke up 3 times throughout the night to find something hovering over him. The investigators used a spirit box to communicate with the spirit. Miranda asked, "Who was hovering over me?" A voice came through saying, "It was me." The crew asked the spirit,
"Are you buried out there in the Tonopah Cemetery?"
and added,
"We're going to go out there and communicate with you out there here in a little bit."
A woman's voice said, "Okay."
Okay, you hear that?
Yeah.
Miranda said he had stopped at the gravesite of Hazel Fire earlier in the day. He asked if that was the spirit communicating with them. A voice said, "Help."
That was loud.
Yeah. Help.
They asked,
Do you want us to help you?
again, they received a voice saying,
Help me.
Did you hear that?
The investigation team went to the cemetery with the spirit box. As they entered, a voice said,
Good luck to you. What was that? Good luck to you.
They saw a shadow move in the graveyard. Then a voice came through saying, "That's Patrick." Ramos then felt something tug on her jacket. The crew had a sense that people were surrounding them. In the next moments, they captured a light fly by them. They ended their investigation of the cemetery and moved to the Clown Motel office, where the creepy large clown is known to move on its own. They did a spirit box session in front of the large clown. One of the investigators said,
Can you move the hands now?
The spirit box said, "When I'm ready." Ramos announced that she felt the back of her chair vibrate. A man's voice through the spirit box said,
That's me.
The investigators ended the spirit box session and turned on a light. They had a camera still rolling with a close-up of the clown's hands. The investigators were standing back talking when the clown's right hand moved on its own. They notice and say, "Whoa." Then, while they're watching the clown, its left hand also falls on its own. How does one react to that? Laugh, of course. It's just clowning around. The Clown Motel is in Tonopah, Nevada, about 200 miles northwest of Las Vegas. Siblings Leona and Leroy David founded the Clown Motel in 1985. They intentionally built their business next to the Tonopah Cemetery because that's where their father, Clarence Davis, was buried. In the early 1900s, Tonopah was a thriving mining town. Clarence David was a miner who died in a 1942 fire, and he was buried in the Tonopah Cemetery. Decades earlier, in 1911, 17 men died from another mine fire and were buried in the cemetery. The cemetery also holds the victims of a 1905 pneumonia outbreak. There are more than 300 graves in the cemetery. So, what's up with the clowns? Clarence David had a collection of 150 clowns. His kids opened the Clown Motel as a memorial to their father and to display his collection. In 1995, Bob and Deborah Perchetti bought the Clown Motel from the Davids. The collection grew to 600 clowns over the 22 years that they owned it. In 2015, the TV series Ghost Adventures did an investigation at the motel. Afterward, clown donations poured in from North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. 79-year-old Bob Perchetti put out the motel for sale in 2017. Bob wrote in the contract that the new owners had to keep it as the Clown Motel. In 2019, brothers Haim Nod and Vijay Mehar took over the business. Adnad, who likes to call himself the CEO of the motel, has collected clowns since he was 14 years old and saw the circus in India. He loved that clowns brought laughter. But it also turns out that clowns bring terror. Adnad was scared when he bought the motel. He was so afraid that he couldn't sleep in his room. He'd hear footsteps, voices, and knocking coming from empty rooms. Adnad eventually thought that the spirits were telling him that they were friendly. His grandmother used to tell him, "Whenever you're down, look at the clown." Adnad must be down because he has more than 3,000 clowns, and has earned his business the title of America's Scariest Motel. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. Thanks again for watching.